Thank you very much for the invitation to this great workshop. Now I'm talking about Mobility's Future in the City, a project that Marlene and I are doing together, but it's our common presentation. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about all the new paradigms. By chance, I don't know where this comes from. I'm talking about technocentrism versus reflexivity in planning cultures. And then part of that project that we did were two workshops, one in Denmark and one in Germany, with a different constellation, or with a mixed constellation of participants from different disciplines, different backgrounds, practitioners, artists, musicians, also scientists. In the fourth section, I'm going to talk about interpretations or intersections and changing perspectives, because I think the aim of the project was very much to figure out how perspectives can change in an interactive setting that I'm going to present. Old and new paradigms. It's not a quote, but it's a thought from Kandinsky from 1911, who said that throughout the 19th century, the either-or predominated, while in the 20th century should be dedicated to the work on the end. And I said that today in the morning, that my background is reflexive modernization, and this quote from Ulrich Beck describes what I want to express with that, or what we want to express with that, and which is kind of framing the theoretical background. He says, there, separation, specialization, the endeavor for unambiguity, predictability of the world, here, juxtaposition, multiplicity, uncertainty, the question of how things relate to each other, cohesion, the experiment of change, of the excluded third, synthesis, ambivalence. I'm going to play with these dichotomies, so old and new, here, this, there, that. The next figure, we discussed that back and forth, if I'm going to put it in, or if we put it in, because I can talk for ages about that. But but I promise that I'm not going to do that. This describes actually why we did the project, because we think this is actually a situation like the title of that workshop, intersections. It's new constellations, new configurations that are coming up. And I think the last two lines are actually essential. It's about, in the old world, the industrial society was about stability and bureaucratism. Max Weber's theories about that. Immobility, predictability, and path dependency were some of the consequences of that. And in the mobile risk society, the reflexive modernity, it's instability, liquidity, and mobility and transition. I think this is the background that we actually did this project because we thought, or we considered the situation right now, that there is a kind of openness for transition, and that the mobilities paradigm is kind of phrasing out a theoretical and conceptual background to bring in a new perspective into that. This is a picture, you probably can't read that, right? It's taken from a project in Munich. It's a planning initiative in Munich. And actually, what I want to say about this picture is there's a lot of things in it about the future of mobility, but there is no people in it. There is no individuals, there is no user, there is no consumer. The only place where it shows up is at one point, it's the end user of transport systems. It's all about infrastructure, it's all about structures in general, it's all about management and optimization of flows. So, and this is representing the predominant perspective in the planning policy in the city of Munich. Planning mobilities. I think the part of the theoretical set out, and we wrote that in the abstract, is that we think instead of thinking about smart cities and smart technologies, smart mobility, and how to use technologies in even a better way, what the aim should be in the current situation is to think about smart urbanism. as Martin Heyer puts it. Smart urbanism, a clever way of organizing planning capacities, institutional capacities, and ways of imagining the future of mobility. Reflexive planning, this is the word or the frame notion that we are using, should be the perspective instead of what is recently has been called cockpitism, the old top-down policies. And it's been criticized on the Sustainable Development Goals, that it's an old governance or it's an old governmental concept that is at work. So cities need to be considered as social organisms, and I like this quote: "You can't just pop the hood and fix them." But what is the perspective? Where are the actors? Where is agency in it? As Johan said that. Where is the kind of entry point for social change? In that paper of Mikucevic, I'm not sure if I pronounced that name right, and Weigel from 2012, they're actually saying the big problem is this technocentric planning paradigm. That in the end, in these planning processes that we observe in urban contexts, it all comes to the question, what kind of technology can be used? How can we optimize existing things? How can we invent in niches sometimes the better technology? But instead of that, planning would look different if social cohesion as a planning goal would be on top instead of flow management and systemic optimization. So what is actually needed is a sort of sociocentrism or anthropocentrism instead of technocentrism. Now I'm talking about the Mobility's Future and the City project, which has been, we've been working on that more or less since 2 years. So we actually finished the report, the last deliverables a couple of weeks ago. And in that project, we had this idea to fly in somehow mobility's theory in the discussions without kind of framing them from a mobility's point of view, but giving the space for redesigning or inventing or rethinking mobility in a broader perspective. That's the reason why we put in a lot of different actors, different participants from many different backgrounds into a kind of relaxed setting. I'm going to talk more about that. The theory of reflexive modernization, as I said at the beginning, is one of these cornerstones of the project, and this is kind of our work to, what I would say, the paradigm shift. It's the interesting thing, coming back to the morning today, is that all these things about paradigm shift that has been written in theory of reflexive modernization can be easily expressed and maybe better, I would say, better expressed in a mobility's terminology. And the argumentative turn, all these approaches about communicative planning, collaborative planning that have been developed during the last years, we tried to get that into a methodology, and it's basically a methodological project that I'm going to present. We made these 2 workshops, and we created a framework where people could work together, could spend a whole week, no 5 days actually, on equal terms. We used the method as the core of the project of the future workshop that has been developed by Jung and Müller in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, during more or less 30 years. We took that as a kind of core of the project and changed the concept in a way, as I'm going to show later. That's the workshop structure. It's not We are actually proud of changing the colors. Then we changed the colors from black to green, but you can't see that. But this is actually what I said. In the core, it's these 2 days of future workshop, where you have a critique phase, where you have a utopian phase, and where you have a realization phase, to phrase out projects where these people who are together want to work on. What we did at the beginning is we added a first day, which is called Building Common Ground, where we in a playful atmosphere brought people into an atmosphere, in a situation where they opened up very much. And one of the results from that project is that it's actually really fascinating, this intersection or this encounter in the first day, during the first day, built up that much trust that these people have been working 5 days together. Because after the workshop, the future workshop, which was kind of strict in line with the future workshop methodology, we had a creative retreat, maybe a little bit like this, what we're going to have tomorrow in the afternoon, where people had open space, where they could develop work on these ideas they took out of these days before.